Commander Zethral stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the small human transport ship dock with their fleet. The sleek vessel looked tiny compared to the massive Caltharian warships surrounding it, but intel reports suggested these newcomers possessed skills that could change the tide of their losing war. The Caltharians have been fighting the Vex Collective for 3 standard years now. What started as a border skirmish had escalated into full-scale warfare when the insectoid Vex decided the mineral-rich Caltharian colonies were too valuable to ignore. Despite their advanced technology and superior numbers, the Caltharians found themselves slowly losing ground to the Vex's relentless swarm tactics. The problem was simple yet devastating. Vex warriors operated in massive coordinated groups, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numbers. Their queens commanded from heavily fortified positions, protected by thousands of drone soldiers. Traditional Caltharian warfare relied on honorable face-to-face combat and technological superiority, but the Vex had no concept of honor and seemed immune to most conventional weapons. Captain Sarah Chun stepped through the airlock, followed by her team of 12 human specialists. The Caltharians had heard stories about these creatures called humans from various galactic trading posts. Earth was apparently a death world where multiple apex predators had somehow evolved intelligence. Most species considered this impossible, as death worlds typically produced either extremely hardy survivors or nothing at all. The humans looked unremarkable to Caltharian eyes. They were bipedal like many species, though shorter than average Caltharians. Their skin appeared soft, lacking the natural armor plating that protected most sapient races. Yet something about the way they moved suggested a predator's awareness, constantly scanning their surroundings with sharp eyes. "Welcome aboard the Starbreaker," Commander Zethral said through his translator device. "I am Commander Zethral of the 4th Caltharian Fleet. Your reputation precedes you." Captain Chun saluted in the human military fashion. "Thank you for accepting our offer of assistance, Commander. I'm Captain Sarah Chun, and this is my precision elimination team. We've studied your tactical reports and believe we can help break the current stalemate." The commander gestured toward the briefing room. "Please, let us discuss the situation. I must admit, your proposal seemed too good to be true. You claim 12 individuals can accomplish what our armies of thousands cannot." As they walked through the corridors, other Caltharian crew members stopped to stare at the humans. Most had never seen the species before, and rumors about human capabilities range from the believable to the fantastic. Some claimed humans could survive in vacuum for short periods. Others insisted they could see in complete darkness, and a few wild stories suggested they never truly slept. In the briefing room, holographic displays showed the current war situation. Red markers indicated Vex-controlled territory, blue showed Caltharian holdings, and yellow marked contested zones. The red was spreading like an infection across the star map. "The situation is dire," Commander Zethral explained. "The Vex have overrun our outer colonies and are pushing toward our core worlds. Our intelligence estimates they have approximately 50 million combat-ready drones supported by 5,000 queens and an unknown number of specialized warrior castes." Sergeant Mike Torres, Chin's second-in-command, studied the tactical displays with interest. "What's your typical engagement range with these Vex?" "Close combat, usually within 500 meters. Their tactics involve overwhelming charge attacks with numerical superiority. Our weapons are effective, but we cannot kill them fast enough when they attack in groups of 10,000 or more." The humans exchanged glances that the Caltharians couldn't interpret. Captain Chin leaned forward. "Commander, may I ask what your longest recorded successful engagement distance has been?" "Approximately 2 kilometers using our heavy plasma artillery. However, at that range, accuracy becomes problematic, and the Vex can take cover or scatter before significant damage is done." Private Jessica Wong suppressed what might have been a smile. "Captain, shall we show them the Peterson Canyon recordings?" Chin nodded and activated a small human data device. The holographic display changed to show a barren landscape with rocky outcroppings. The image was remarkably clear, showing details at what appeared to be extreme distance. "This was recorded during a training exercise on Mars," Chin explained. "The target was a combat drone at a distance of 3,847 meters. Observe." The image showed a tiny speck moving between rocks. Suddenly, The speck simply ceased to exist in a small cloud of debris. There had been no visible projectile, no energy beam, and no sound. Ow! Commander Zethral stared at the display. What weapon could achieve such precision at that distance? Human long-range, kinetic projectile systems, Chen replied calmly. What we call sniper rifles. The projectile travels faster than sound, so the target never knows it's coming. The effective range depends on conditions, but our best marksmen can achieve lethal accuracy beyond 5 kilometers. The Caltharian officers looked skeptical. Such ranges seemed impossible for portable weapons. Their own handheld energy weapons had maximum effective ranges of perhaps 800 meters. Sergeant Torres activated another recording. This shows multiple target engagement. 6 targets eliminated in 14 seconds at ranges between 1,200 and 2,100 meters. The new hologram showed 6 moving targets in an open area. One by one, they simply stopped moving, each falling within moments of the previous one. The precision was mechanical, almost surgical in its efficiency. You're claiming 12 humans can eliminate Vex leadership from distances they cannot possibly retaliate from? The commander's voice carried doubt, mixed with desperate hope. Not claiming, Commander. Guaranteeing. Captain Chen's voice was steady and confident. Give us proper intelligence on Queen locations, clear sight lines, and support to get into position. We'll show you how humans hunt. The briefing continued for 2 more hours. The humans asked detailed questions about Vex biology, behavioral patterns, command structures, and defensive capabilities. They seemed particularly interested in how Queens control their drones and what happened when Queens were eliminated. The drones become disorganized without Queen oversight, explained Subcommander Krillin. They typically retreat to established hive positions and await new Queens to arrive. This usually takes several local days. Perfect, Chen said. Disruption and confusion are exactly what we need. How many Queens typically command a major offensive? Between 20 and 50, depending on the operation size. They maintain communication through bioelectric signals and rarely expose themselves to direct combat. The humans nodded as if this confirmed their expectations. Commander Zethral was beginning to feel something he hadn't experienced in months of losing battles. Hope. When can we begin? He asked. Immediately. We need current intelligence on the next major Vex offensive and transport to within 50 kilometers of the target zone. After that, we work best alone. As the meeting concluded, Commander Zethral found himself believing these strange predators might actually succeed where conventional warfare had failed. The humans seemed to possess an almost casual confidence about killing at impossible distances. What he didn't yet understand was that humans had evolved as persistent hunters on a world where survival meant thinking like prey while acting like apex predators. They had learned to kill efficiently and from great distances because on Earth, anything else meant death. The war was about to change dramatically. The transport ship descended through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b, a contested world where Caltharian forces had been holding defensive positions for 6 months. Below them, the Vex had assembled what intelligence estimated to be their largest offensive force yet. Nearly 2 million drones supported by 47 Queens, preparing to overrun the last Caltharian stronghold on the planet. Captain Chun studied the terrain maps while her team performed final equipment checks. The weapons they carried looked primitive compared to Caltharian energy technology. Long metal tubes with complex optical systems, each rifle weighing nearly 20 kilograms with ammunition. The Caltharians had offered to outfit them with plasma weapons, but the humans politely declined. Energy weapons create thermal signatures, Sergeant Torres had explained. Our projectile weapons are virtually undetectable until impact. Also, kinetic energy doesn't dissipate like plasma does over extreme distances. Private David Kim was checking his ammunition count for the 3rd time. Each round was precisely manufactured to tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. The bullets themselves were works of engineering art. Tungsten cores wrapped in copper jackets, designed to maintain stability over kilometers of flight while delivering devastating kinetic energy to the target. Nervous? Asked Corporal Lisa Zhang, adjusting the scope on her rifle. Agitate, Kim replied. We've trained for anti-hive operations for 2 years, but this is our first real-world application against actual alien swarms. The human team had been specifically recruited and trained for exactly this type of mission. Earth's military had recognized that future interstellar conflicts would likely involve species with vastly different tactical approaches than humans were accustomed to. Traditional human warfare emphasized mobility, technology, and small unit tactics, but against swarm species, new approaches were needed. Captain Chun had been chosen to lead this experimental unit after her performance in the Martian insurrection, where rebel forces had attempted to overwhelm colonial security using modified worker robots in massive coordinated attacks. Her solution had been devastatingly simple. Eliminate the control nodes from extreme range, leaving thousands of robots directionless and harmless. The transport settled into a rocky canyon system approximately 60 kilometers from the main Vex staging area. The humans disembarked quickly, carrying their equipment with practiced efficiency. Each team member bore personal gear weighing nearly 40 kilograms, including specialized ammunition, optical equipment, communications gear, and survival supplies for a week-long operation. Remember, we're not here to win the war in one battle, Chin reminded her team as they established their base camp in a concealed cave system. Our objective is to prove the concept and gather intelligence on Vex command vulnerabilities. The team split into 4 3-person units, each tasked with infiltrating different observation positions around the Vex staging area. They moved through the alien landscape with a patient, methodical approach that had made human hunters legendary throughout Earth's history. Sergeant Torres led his team toward the northern observation post, moving through terrain that would have challenged mountain goats. The Vex had chosen their staging area well, a vast plain surrounded by rocky highlands that provided excellent defensive positions. What they hadn't anticipated was that these same highlands offered perfect shooting positions for creatures that had evolved to hunt from concealment. The journey took 18 hours of careful movement. The humans progressed only when certain they remained undetected, using natural terrain features to mask their approach. They carried no energy weapons that might be detected by Vex sensors, relying instead on passive observation equipment and weapons that had remained essentially unchanged for centuries. Through high-powered scopes, they began observing Vex behavior patterns. The creatures were indeed insectoid, roughly humanoid, but covered in natural chitin armor. Drones moved in perfectly coordinated groups, never acting independently. Queens were larger, more heavily armored, and remained in the center of defensive clusters. "This is Ghost One," Torres whispered into his throat microphone. "Eyes on primary staging area. Estimate 1.8 million drones in organized formations. Confirmed visual on 17 queens at ranges from 2,100 to 3,400 meters." Chen's voice crackled back through their encrypted communication system. "Copy, Ghost One. What's your assessment of engagement viability?" Torres studied the targets through his scope. The queens were positioned exactly as Caltharian intelligence had suggested, in the center of massive drone formations, seemingly protected by thousands of bodies. However, they had underestimated human ingenuity and patience. Multiple clean shots available. Queens are stationary for extended periods during what appears to be coordination activities. Wind conditions favorable. Background terrain suitable for concealment post-engagement. Similar reports came in from the other teams. The Vex had positioned themselves in what they believed was an impregnable formation, but they were thinking in terms of conventional warfare. No species in the galaxy had developed long-range precision shooting to the degree humans had. Private Kim was calculating range and wind adjustments for his assigned target. The Queen was 2,847 meters away, positioned on a slight elevation that provided clear sight lines. She remained motionless for 20-minute intervals while apparently coordinating with drone formations through bioelectric signals. "The beauty of this," Kim whispered to his spotter, "is that they have no concept of individual marksmanship. Look at their formations. They're thinking in terms of area denial and mass assault. They're not even considering that someone might target specific individuals from outside their defensive perimeter." This was the fundamental advantage humans brought to galactic warfare. Most species had developed either close combat prowess or advanced energy weapons, but Only humans had perfected the art of killing from extreme distance with mechanical precision. It was a uniquely human skill born from evolutionary necessity on a world where the weak became prey. The team spent 2 days in position, observing patterns and waiting for the optimal engagement window. The Vex maintained predictable schedules, with queens emerging for coordination sessions at regular intervals. During these sessions, they were stationary and vulnerable. All teams, this is control. Chen's voice came through their communicators. Caltharian forces report Vex offensive preparations are complete. Enemy attack begins in 6 hours. We execute our operation in 30 minutes during the next queen coordination window. The humans began final preparations. Each marksman selected primary and secondary targets, calculated precise range and environmental adjustments, and synchronized their timing. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, simultaneous elimination of as many queens as possible, creating maximum chaos and confusion in the Vex command structure. Remember, Chen's final briefing reminded them, after the first shots, we have perhaps 10 minutes before they locate our positions. Make every shot count, then execute immediate withdrawal to Rally Point Alpha. Torres felt his heartbeat slow as he entered the focused state that separated elite marksmen from ordinary soldiers. His target was a queen positioned 3,156 meters away, clearly visible through his scope. Around her, thousands of drones moved in organized patterns, unaware that death was about to arrive from an impossible distance. The countdown reached 0. Across the highlands surrounding the Vex staging area, 12 human weapons fired almost simultaneously. The queens died before the sound of the shots reached them. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Drone formations began wandering aimlessly as their coordination signals ceased. Some groups simply stopped moving entirely, while others began random, purposeless activities. Within minutes, the most organized military force in Vex history had become a confused mob of directionless insects. The humans were already moving to secondary positions when the first Vex search parties began investigating the highlands. By the time the aliens reached the shooting positions, they found only empty rocks and the lingering scent of propellant that meant nothing to their alien senses. The Caltharian observers watching from orbit could hardly believe what they were seeing. In less than 15 minutes, 12 humans had accomplished what their armies had been unable to do in months of warfare. They had broken the most dangerous Vex offensive ever assembled. The numbers had indeed changed everything. The Caltharian Command Center erupted in controlled chaos as battlefield reports flooded in from the surface of Kepler 442b. What had begun as preparation for another devastating defeat was rapidly becoming the most significant tactical victory in months. Sir, drone formations across sectors 7 through 12 have completely collapsed, reported Subcommander Krillin, his voice betraying amazement. They're moving randomly. Some groups are attacking each other, and approximately 30% have simply stopped functioning. Commander Zethral watched the tactical display in disbelief. Red markers indicating organized Vex formations were flickering and disappearing across the map, replaced by scattered yellow dots representing confused individual units. The massive coordinated assault that should have begun an hour ago had simply disintegrated. Confirmed elimination of 17 Vex queens, came another report. Long-range sensors detected no energy weapon discharges, no explosive signatures. The eliminations appear to have been simultaneous across multiple target areas. The commander opened communications with the human team. Captain Chun, this is incredible. How did you accomplish this? Chen's voice came back steady and professional through the communicator. Commander, we eliminated 17 command nodes as planned. However, we're observing some unexpected secondary effects. The drone disorganization is more severe than we anticipated. We may have underestimated how dependent these creatures are on constant queen oversight. What the humans hadn't fully understood was the depth of Vex biological programming. Unlike human military structures where individual soldiers could operate independently when leadership was eliminated, Vex drones were literally incapable of complex decision-making without constant bioelectric guidance from their queens. Sergeant Torres was observing the aftermath through his scope from a new position 3 kilometers away. Captain, this is fascinating from a tactical perspective. Look at Sector 9, without queen coordination, the drones are reverting to basic survival instincts. They're forming defensive clusters and refusing to advance. The scope showed thousands of Vex drones milling about aimlessly. Some had begun digging defensive positions despite having no enemies to defend against. Others were simply standing motionless, apparently waiting for orders that would never come. It was like watching a sophisticated machine break down into component parts. Private Kim reported from his observation post, "Ma'am, we're seeing something interesting. The remaining queens are attempting to expand their control ranges to compensate for the losses, but they appear to be struggling. Some drones are receiving conflicting signals from multiple queens. This created an even more chaotic situation. Drones caught between competing queen signals were exhibiting erratic behavior, some spinning in circles, others moving back and forth between conflicting objectives. The magnificent military precision that had made the Vex so dangerous was collapsing into biological confusion. On the surface, Caltharian ground forces were reporting unprecedented opportunities. "Command, this is General Thalvik," came a transmission from the planet's surface. "Enemy formations are completely disrupted. We're advancing into positions they held for 6 months with minimal resistance. Some drone groups are actually retreating when approached." The human sniper teams began Phase 2 of their operation, systematic elimination of the remaining queens who were attempting to restore order. This required different tactics, as the surviving Vex leadership was now aware they were under attack, even if they didn't understand the nature of the threat. "Teams, we're switching to hunter-killer mode," Chen announced. "Queens are now mobile and attempting evasive patterns. Adjust tactics accordingly." This was where human evolutionary advantages became most apparent. The ability to track, predict, and intercept moving targets over long distances was a skill humans had developed over millions of years of persistent hunting. While other species had evolved to fight or flee when threatened, humans had evolved to methodically pursue their prey until exhaustion made it vulnerable. Corporal Zhang was tracking a queen attempting to relocate her command position. The creature was moving in what it probably considered an unpredictable pattern, but to human eyes trained in hunting, the movements showed clear logic. The queen was attempting to maintain communication with her drone clusters while seeking heavy cover. "Predictable," Zhang muttered, calculating the target's most likely destination. Rather than trying to hit a moving target, she positioned her crosshairs where the queen would have to emerge to re-establish drone control. When the creature appeared exactly where predicted, the shot was almost anticlimactic. The effectiveness of human tactics was becoming clear to Caltharian observers. While their own military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force and technological superiority, humans fought like apex predators, patient, precise, and utterly ruthless in execution. "Another queen down in Sector 4, reported Private Wong. "Drones in that area are now completely inactive. They're not even responding to direct attacks from our advancing forces." Commander Zethrael was beginning to understand why humans had earned their reputation as one of the galaxy's most dangerous species. It wasn't their technology or their physical capabilities. It was their approach to conflict. They fought like creatures who had spent millennia as both predator and prey, developing an instinctive understanding of how to exploit weaknesses in any opponent. The battle that was supposed to last days was effectively over in 6 hours. The human teams had eliminated 31 of the original 47 queens, and the surviving Vex leadership was in full retreat with whatever drones still responded to their commands. "Captain Shun, preliminary reports indicate enemy forces are withdrawing from the planet entirely," Commander Zethrael reported. "Caltharian ground forces are advancing across all fronts with minimal casualties. This is unprecedented." Chen's response carried a note of satisfaction. "Commander, this is just the beginning. We've identified fundamental weaknesses in Vex command structure that can be exploited on a strategic scale. With proper coordination, we can apply these tactics across multiple theaters simultaneously." The implications were staggering. If 12 humans could neutralize a force of 2 million enemies, what could larger human units accomplish? The galactic balance of power was about to shift dramatically. But the humans weren't finished. As Caltharian forces advanced across the abandoned Vex positions, the sniper teams were already planning their next phase: infiltration of the main Vex staging areas to gather intelligence on their overall command structure and Identify opportunities for larger-scale operations. Teams, we're moving to Phase 3, Chen announced. Intelligence gathering in abandoned Vex positions. We need to understand how their command hierarchy functions and identify vulnerabilities we can exploit in future operations. The humans began moving through the chaotic battlefield with the same methodical approach they'd used for the initial assault. They avoided contact with both retreating Vex forces and advancing Caltharian troops, focusing on their intelligence-gathering mission. What they discovered in the abandoned Vex command posts would prove even more valuable than their tactical success. The creatures had left behind biological communication equipment, tactical plans, and, most importantly, detailed charts of Vex territory and command structures throughout the galaxy. Private Kim found himself studying bioorganic computers that the Vex Queens had used for strategic planning. The information was overwhelming. Hundreds of systems, thousands of queens, and military assets that dwarfed anything the Caltharians possessed. Captain, Kim reported, you need to see this. The Vex aren't just attacking Caltharian territory. They're conducting simultaneous operations against 17 different species across this spiral arm. This is a galactic conquest operation. The scope of Vex ambitions was becoming clear, but so were their vulnerabilities. The same centralized command structure that allowed them to coordinate massive multi-species campaigns also created single points of failure that human tactics could exploit. Chen studied the captured intelligence with growing excitement. Command, this is Captain Chun. We've recovered extensive intelligence on Vex strategic operations. Transmitting data now. Recommend immediate consultation with Earth Command. We're going to need more sniper teams. The war was about to expand far beyond anything the Caltharians had imagined, but now they had allies who specialized in the one thing the Vex couldn't defend against: death from impossible distances delivered by invisible killers. 3 weeks after the victory at Kepler, 442b, the situation had escalated beyond anyone's initial expectations. Earth Command had responded to Captain Chen's intelligence reports by authorizing Operation Silent Thunder, the deployment of 200 human sniper teams across 17 different star systems where Vex forces were conducting conquest operations. The Caltharian High Council was hosting an unprecedented gathering in the Rigel system. Representatives from 14 species that had fallen under Vex attack were meeting to coordinate their defense, and, for the first time, human military advisors were invited to present their tactical analysis. Admiral Sarah Martinez, commander of Earth's 3rd Deep Space Fleet, stood before the assembled alien dignitaries in a massive council chamber. The other species representatives towered over her: Caltharians with their blue-scaled armor, crystalline Theknari delegates that chimed musically when they spoke, and the imposing rock-like Gorlins whose very presence made the chamber floor vibrate. Honored delegates, Admiral Martinez began, her words translated into 14 different languages by the Council's advanced linguistic systems. The intelligence gathered by Captain Chen's team has revealed the true scope of the Vex threat. What we're facing isn't a series of separate territorial conflicts. It's a coordinated galactic conquest operation. The holographic display behind her showed the spiral arm of the galaxy, with red indicators marking Vex activities across dozens of systems. The pattern was clear. The Vex were simultaneously attacking multiple species, preventing any coordinated resistance, while systematically harvesting resources and territory. However, the Admiral continued, our analysis has also revealed critical vulnerabilities in their command structure the human tactical doctrine is uniquely positioned to exploit. Counselor Vectar of the Theknari delegation chimed a question through their translator. Admiral Martinez, your species' initial success was impressive, but the scale you're describing requires resources we're not certain humans possess. How can you coordinate operations across such vast distances? This question went to the heart of human military philosophy that other species struggled to understand. While most galactic civilizations had developed either overwhelming technological superiority or massive numerical advantages, humans had evolved a different approach: network-centric warfare based on small, independent units operating with minimal support. Counselor, human military doctrine has always emphasized individual initiative and adaptability, Martinez explained. Our sniper teams are trained to operate independently for extended periods, making tactical decisions based on local conditions without requiring constant oversight. She activated a new display showing human team deployments across the affected systems. Each team consists of 12 specialists carrying equipment that allows them to remain self-sufficient for up to 30 days. They can establish concealed positions, gather intelligence, and eliminate high-value targets without requiring supply lines or support infrastructure. The Gorlan representative, whose name roughly translated to Stone Speaker of Military Matters, rumbled a deep bass question. This approach seems to require accepting significant risks to small units. How do you ensure coordination without central command? Captain Chun, who had been promoted and assigned to Admiral Martinez's staff, stepped forward to answer. Honored Stone Speaker, human evolution on a dangerous world taught us that survival often requires individuals to make critical decisions quickly and independently. Our teams are trained to understand strategic objectives and adapt their tactics to achieve those objectives regardless of changing circumstances. This was perhaps the most difficult concept for other species to grasp. The Vex succeeded through absolute coordination and central control. Most galactic species had developed similar hierarchical command structures. But humans had learned to fight like pack hunters, individually capable, but able to coordinate through shared understanding rather than constant communication. Let me demonstrate with recent operations, Chun continued, bringing up tactical reports from the past 3 weeks. Human teams deployed to the Centaurus conflicts have eliminated 127 Vex Queens across 7 different worlds. Each team adapted their tactics to local conditions without requiring new orders from Earth Command. The results spoke for themselves. Vex operations in the Centaurus sector had collapsed as drone armies lost coordination. 3 species that had been facing extinction were now pushing Vex forces back to their staging areas. But the most significant intelligence had come from captured Vex biocomputers, which revealed the location of the primary Hive Command, a massive space-based facility in the Vega system where the Supreme Vex Queens coordinated their galactic conquest operations. This brings us to our primary proposal, Admiral Martinez said, her voice becoming more serious. Operation Kingmaker, a coordinated strike against the primary Hive Command to eliminate the Supreme Queens and cripple Vex strategic coordination across the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. What the Admiral was proposing was essentially a direct assault on the most heavily defended position in Vex space, protected by millions of drone fighters and dozens of heavily armed bioships. The facility is located in deep space, surrounded by defensive positions that our analysts estimate contain between 5 and 10 million combat drones, Martinez continued. Conventional assault would require fleet assets none of us currently possess. However, our tactical analysis suggests an alternative approach. Chun activated a detailed schematic of the primary Hive Command. The structure was enormous, a bioorganic space station nearly 200 kilometers in diameter, bristling with defensive weapons and surrounded by layers of drone ships. The facility's defensive design assumes conventional attack patterns, Chun explained. Energy weapon bombardment, fighter attacks, or assault ship invasions. What it doesn't anticipate is infiltration by small teams using non-energy weapons to eliminate specific targets from extreme range. The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. Rather than attempting to fight through the massive defensive perimeter, small human teams would infiltrate using stealth technology borrowed from Earth's intelligence services. They would position themselves within the station's superstructure and systematically eliminate the Supreme Queens who controlled the entire Vex galactic operation. The risk assessment is significant, Admiral Martinez admitted. Success would require precise coordination between multiple teams operating in a hostile environment with no possibility of extraction if detected. Failure would mean not only the loss of our best personnel, but potentially exposing our tactical capabilities to Vex analysis. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Some delegates argued that the plan was too risky, that failure would doom all their species to Vex conquest. Others pointed out that conventional resistance was already failing across multiple systems, and radical action was their only hope. It was the youngest delegate, representing a species called the Pethra, whose homeworld had fallen to the Vex just days earlier, who ultimately swayed the discussion. Honored delegates, she said, her voice carrying the weight of recent tragedy. My people tried conventional resistance. We had advanced technology, strong defenses, and brave warriors. The Vex overwhelmed us through sheer numbers and perfect coordination. If these humans can break that coordination, even at significant risk, how can we refuse? The vote was unanimous. Operation Kingmaker was authorized with full multi-species support. Human teams would receive whatever resources they needed, and Allied fleets would provide diversionary attacks to mask the infiltration operation. As the council session concluded, Admiral Martinez found herself surrounded by alien delegates asking detailed questions about human military capabilities and offering resources for the operation. The galaxy's perception of humanity was changing rapidly from minor newcomers to essential allies. But Captain Chun was already thinking about the practical challenges ahead. The primary hive command wasn't just heavily defended. It was an alien environment designed by a species with completely different biological requirements. Operating inside, it would require modifications to equipment, tactics, and basic survival procedures. Admiral, Chun said quietly as they left the council chamber, we're going to need our best people for this. And we're going to need equipment that doesn't exist yet. Martinez nodded grimly. I know. Earth Command is already mobilizing every resource we have. The Engineering Corps is developing specialized infiltration gear, and we're pulling our most experienced operators from every service branch. They both understood what wasn't being said aloud. Operation Kingmaker would likely be a one-way mission for most of the participants. But if it succeeded, it would save billions of lives across 17 species and establish humanity as a major power in galactic affairs. The numbers were about to change on a scale that would reshape the entire galaxy. But first, human ingenuity would be tested against the most dangerous enemy any of them had ever faced. 3 days later, the first volunteer teams began arriving at the staging area in the Wolf 359 system, preparing for the most dangerous mission in human military history. The Wolf 359 system had been transformed into humanity's largest military staging area. 3 months after the Galactic Council's authorization, Operation Kingmaker was ready to begin. Captain Chin stood on the observation deck of the UES Adamant, watching the final preparations for what military historians would later call the most audacious special operations mission ever attempted. 8 human teams, 96 of Earth's most elite soldiers, were preparing to infiltrate the primary hive command. The Vex facility had grown even larger since initial intelligence reports. Long-range sensors now estimated it contained between 12 and 15 million defensive drones, controlled by an estimated 300 Supreme Queens. The infiltration technology had pushed human engineering to its limits. Each team carried prototype stealth suits that masked thermal, electromagnetic, and biological signatures. Their weapons had been specially modified with sound suppressors and muzzle flash eliminators that would make them virtually undetectable even in enclosed spaces. Most importantly, the ammunition had been redesigned with delayed-action explosive cores that would prevent immediate detection of the source. Sergeant Torres, now promoted to Team Leader Alpha, was conducting final equipment checks with his expanded 12-person unit. The mission parameters were unlike anything they'd trained for. Infiltrate a hostile alien space station, navigate through organic corridors designed for creatures with different sensory capabilities, and eliminate specific targets while avoiding detection by millions of enemies. Remember, Torres briefed his team. The Vex facility is bioorganic. The walls, floors, and ceilings are living tissue that can potentially detect vibrations, chemical signatures, or temperature changes. We move like ghosts, we shoot like surgeons, and we extract like shadows. The infiltration plan relied on captured Vex transport vessels that had been carefully modified by Caltharian engineers. These bioships would appear to be normal supply vessels returning to the primary hive command, but their cargo holds contained human teams in specialized stealth pods. Private Kim had spent weeks studying the internal layout of Vex facilities based on intelligence gathered from captured stations. The Supreme Queens would be located in the facility's core, protected by layers of defensive drones and organic barrier walls. Reaching them would require navigating through nearly 50 kilometers of hostile territory. The beauty of this operation, Kim explained to his teammate, is that the Vex can't conceive of individual infiltrators. Their entire defense strategy is based on stopping large-scale assaults. They're looking for fleets, not ghosts. Admiral Martinez watched the final briefing from the command center, knowing that she was sending these soldiers on a mission with survival odds that statistical analysis couldn't even calculate. But the alternative was watching 17 species slowly fall to Vex conquest, while humanity remained safe only until the aliens turned their attention to Earth. All teams, final communication check, she announced. Once you're inside that facility, we'll have no way to contact you until extraction. You'll be operating on your own judgment with the fate of the galaxy, depending on your success. The responses came back crisp and professional. These weren't just Earth's best soldiers. They were individuals who had specifically volunteered for what everyone understood was likely a suicide mission. They were motivated not by orders or patriotism, but by the understanding that their actions would determine whether intelligent life in this part of the galaxy remained free. Captain Chun had elected to lead Team Omega, the unit tasked with the most dangerous assignment: elimination of the primary queen, the supreme commander of all Vex operations. Intelligence suggested she was located in the facility's absolute center, protected by layers of defensive systems that no conventional force could penetrate. The insertion phase went flawlessly. The captured Vex vessels approached the primary hive command along standard supply routes, broadcasting bioelectric recognition signals that identified them as legitimate traffic. Caltharian modifications to the vessel's biological systems made them indistinguishable from genuine Vex craft. As the ships docked with the massive station, human teams emerged from their stealth pods and began the most challenging infiltration in military history. The station's interior was a nightmare of organic architecture, pulsing walls, breathing corridors, and surfaces that seemed to watch the intruders with alien intelligence. Team Alpha advanced through what appeared to be a major transportation artery, a tunnel lined with bioluminescent nodules that provided alien vision while creating strange shadows that human eyes struggled to interpret. Torres led his team through environments that challenged every aspect of their training. "This is like moving through the inside of some massive creature," whispered Corporal Zhang over their encrypted communications. "The walls are warm, and the floor has a pulse." The teams had trained for this disorientation, but experiencing the reality of operating inside a living alien structure was psychologically challenging. Every surface seemed to react to their presence, and they had to trust that their stealth technology would prevent detection by senses they didn't fully understand. Navigation proved more difficult than expected. The station's organic layout didn't follow logical geometric patterns. Corridors curved and branched according to alien architectural principles, and what appeared to be direct routes often led to dead ends or areas filled with incomprehensible biological machinery. Team Beta, led by Lieutenant Sarah Park, encountered their first major obstacle when they reached what intelligence had identified as a security checkpoint. The area was filled with specialized sensor drones that moved in complex patterns, apparently scanning for unauthorized biological signatures. "Control, this is Beta," Park whispered into her throat microphone. "We're seeing detection patterns that weren't in the intelligence reports. These drones are actively hunting for something. They're not just passive sensors." The teams had prepared for this possibility. Rather than attempting to bypass the security systems, they waited for patrol patterns to create brief gaps and moved through with the patience that made human persistence hunting legendary. It took 40 minutes to advance 200 meters, but they remained undetected. As the teams penetrated deeper into the facility, they began encountering the Supreme Queens themselves. These creatures were vastly larger than the tactical queens they'd eliminated in previous operations, some nearly 10 meters tall, with massively enhanced biological communication systems that allowed them to coordinate millions of drones simultaneously. Team Gamma achieved the first elimination at 0347 ship time. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez had positioned herself in an observation alcove overlooking what appeared to be a major command center. The Supreme Queen was stationary for nearly 30 minutes while coordinating what looked like fleet movements across multiple star systems. The shot was perfect, a single tungsten projectile traveling at 850 meters per second, striking the Queen's primary neural cluster and causing immediate termination. The effect on the command center was immediate. Dozens of communication stations went silent, and Visible confusion spread among the attending drones. Confirmed elimination of Supreme Queen Alpha 7, Rodriguez reported. Local drones are showing disorganization, but no general alarm yet. Moving to secondary position. Across the facility, other teams achieved similar successes. Each eliminated Supreme Queen caused cascading failures in Vex coordination systems. Fleet operations were disrupted, planetary assaults stalled, and strategic communications broke down across multiple star systems. But the facility's defenses were beginning to respond. The elimination of Supreme Queens triggered automated security protocols that began sealing sections of the station and deploying specialized hunter-killer drones to search for intruders. Team Omega reached the facility's core after 6 hours of careful infiltration. The primary Queen's chamber was a cathedral-sized space dominated by a creature that defied description, a being nearly 50 meters long, connected to organic computing systems that spanned the entire facility. Captain Chun studied the target through her scope while her team established security positions. The primary Queen wasn't just a military commander. She was the biological nerve center of the entire Vex Galactic operation, simultaneously coordinating conquest operations across 17 species. "This is it," Chun whispered to her spotter. One shot to change the balance of power across the galaxy. The shot had to be perfect. The primary Queen was protected by layers of bioarmor and positioned to make targeting her vital systems extremely difficult. Chun spent 20 minutes calculating angles, studying the creature's movements, and waiting for the optimal moment. When it came, Chun didn't hesitate. The modified tungsten projectile struck precisely where her calculations indicated the primary Queen's central nervous system should be located. The creature's death was immediate and absolute. The effect across the galaxy was instantaneous. Vex operations on dozens of worlds simply stopped. Fleets that had been executing coordinated maneuvers began moving randomly. Assault forces stopped in the middle of attacks and began defensive behaviors. But inside the primary hive command, alarms were finally sounding. The death of the primary Queen had triggered every security system in the facility, and millions of drones began converging on the core areas. "All teams, this is Omega Actual," Chun broadcast. "Primary objective achieved. Execute immediate extraction to rally points. We've got company coming." The withdrawal was a running battle through corridors now filled with hostile drones. Human stealth technology was no longer sufficient against the massive security response, and the teams had to fight their way back to extraction points using their superior training and equipment. Team Delta was lost during the withdrawal when they were cornered in a biomechanical processing center. Their final transmission reported successful elimination of 12 more Supreme Queens before communication ceased. Teams Alpha and Gamma reached their extraction vessels, but suffered heavy casualties fighting through drone swarms. Captain Chin's team made it to their extraction point with only 7 survivors, carrying the wounded and fighting rearguard actions against pursuing enemies. As their vessel detached from the primary hive command, they could see the massive facility beginning to shut down, millions of drones becoming inactive as command systems failed. The final toll was severe: 37 human soldiers killed, 23 wounded, but mission objectives exceeded. 47 Supreme Queens eliminated, including the primary Queen. Vex Galactic operations crippled across 17 star systems. Within days, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Vex forces were withdrawing from dozens of worlds. Species that had been facing extinction were suddenly pushing back successful counteroffensives. The galactic balance of power had shifted dramatically. Admiral Martinez received Chun and the surviving teams as heroes, but she understood the true cost of their success. Earth had announced its arrival as a galactic military power through the sacrifice of its best soldiers. "Captain," the Admiral said privately to Chun during the debriefing, "the Galactic Council is requesting permanent human military advisors for all major operations. They're also asking about the possibility of training other species in human tactical methods." Chun looked out at the stars, thinking about teammates who wouldn't be coming home. "Admiral, we've shown them that numbers don't always determine victory. Sometimes it's about precision, patience, and the willingness to take calculated risks that others consider impossible." The war against the Vex continued, but Now was a war the galaxy could win. Human tactical doctrine was being studied and adapted by military academies across dozens of species. The concept of precision elimination of command targets from extreme range became standard doctrine. Earth had found its place in galactic civilization not through superior technology or massive fleets, but by demonstrating the ultimate human talent, the ability to accomplish the impossible through skill, determination, and acceptable losses in pursuit of strategic objectives. The numbers had indeed changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same.